across Texas. The issue is.
I'm Rudy Koski in Austin.
I'm Greg Krugen in Houston.
And I'm Stephen Dial in Dallas, and this is Texas. The issue is.
The issue up for discussion is, will a second attempt at regulating the hemp industry result in a summertime meltdown at the Texas Capitol? The veto of SB 3 by Governor Greg Abbott with his call for a late July special session was praised and criticized. Hemp industry advocate Cynthia Cabrera with Hometown Hero spoke with me about this rebooted debate and how Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick made it clear he is digging in.
I will say I give Texas a lot of props. I give them a lot of kudos for being the first state to implement comprehensive regulation, and a couple of things were overlooked, specifically age restrictions, child-resistant packaging, things like that.
We have no idea who's making this product. Are they terrorists? Is this a terrorist money laundering scheme in Texas?
Regardless of what Lieutenant Dan says, Texas has had regulation on the hemp space since 2019. So the idea that the space is wholly unregulated is untrue. It's inaccurate.
BS on all of it.
What do you think about regulating pushing the beverages into package stores and just say that's where they're going to be and regulating them just like alcohol?
Well, the package stores are very much interested in having all the beverages to themselves. That came up during the regular session, right? There was a competing bill that banned everything except drinks. So it only benefited the package stores.
Would you support something that would regulate the consumables the way that Sudafed D is, that it's limited to just pharmacies and that's where it's dispensed?
No. What would the purpose of that be?
Control.
Well, if the state were, if Dishes were enforcing, that wouldn't be an issue. So Dishes collects registration fees from every type of business in the hemp industry, and those fees are meant to be used on enforcement.
I'm staying with the ban because we cannot regulate. And even if you go to 3%, there will be bad actors. You cannot regulate 8,000 stores. Law enforcement knows that.
So it's not that difficult. If they need to hire more inspectors, if we know where the other I asked someone from DPS one day where the funding, where those registration fees go. And he said, you probably paved a road somewhere.
With that said, you oppose increasing the tax, increasing the fees until we know exactly where that money that's already there is supposed to be going?
Well, let me flip it on you. Would you agree to increasing something without knowing where the money was going?
Do you support a Senate bill to have a hearing in the Senate, or will you wait for a House bill to come to the Senate?
Rudy, I won't speculate. We have a ways to go and a lot to do.
Follow the money.
Follow the money. I mean, listen, there is not an opposition to increasing the fees, but the money has to be used for the industry. You can't take the money and then say that there is no money.
We could just repeal them. We could just pass a bill to repeal the bill we passed. And that would put an end to it.
How fun, Texas in July.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be even a hotter August. Now, a couple of words come to mind for that discussion, like dazed and confused, but I decided to go with override. Stephen, what's your word?
My word is simple: cinema.
Greg, give me a word.
Rudy, my word is re-rack, as in scrape the table and start from scratch.
Yeah, here we go again. Deja vu all over again. We'll go to break with that. When we come back, the Texas Trio will discuss the possible options waiting for state lawmakers. Welcome back. State lawmakers will return to Austin July the 21st. The big issue for them, whether or not to shut down or regulate the hemp industry in Texas. Override was my word for that interview we just saw, as in who's going to get run over in this special session, hemp advocates, those who want the ban, or the governor's veto itself. Now, an override requires 2/3 vote in the House and in the Senate. Certainly a long shot, but I think the override option could play an early play, or maybe even a late play in this special. Stephen, at the end of the day, did the hemp industry win a battle with the veto but lost the war, or is a big fee tax increase to pay for more inspectors? Is that the compromise?
Man, right now they can celebrate, but that celebration, I don't know how long it'll last. There will definitely be some type of change after this special session. I'm not so sure on an all-out ban. You mentioned override. That's doable in the Senate and the House. I don't know. We were talking offline. Democrats, some of them voted for this as a bargaining chip to get other things like public education funding across the table. Now that they already have that and the governor's already signed it, they have no incentive to try to side with Dan Patrick. So we'll have to wait and see. I think they'll put more regulations. I still do not think it'll be an all-out ban.
You know, the hemp industry clearly wants a deal, but the lieutenant governor a few days ago, he dug in. Greg, do you think your sources think that he is just blowing smoke to get some tough regulations and a partial ban, which the governor's office has signaled is an option that Abbott could sign? Maybe that's the option.
Look, Rudy, my word was re-rack for a reason. The over-the-counter THC business got a final hour reprieve from the death penalty, and it's hardly the atmosphere to get aggressive and demanding, or they will be right back in the death chamber faster than Dan Patrick can say, load up the needle. No, the THC industry needs to be both humble and remorseful for standing idly by as many retailers went hog wild and frankly injured lots of Texans in the process. In my opinion, that means setting up hard, fast, and brutal rules which the good players can follow and the bad actors will likely break, and then be summarily banished. Zero tolerance for rule breaking and enforcement of the rules that's fully funded by hefty taxation and licensing fees on the $8 billion industry. The hemp industry is in no position to negotiate and should be saying, thank you, may I have another, as lawmakers require stringent testing, limit packaging, and regulate location of retail outlets. Guys?
No pledge pins from Greg Grugan, but a sledgehammer, right? All right. Stephen says the override is doubtful. Patrick suggested if an override of the veto doesn't happen, state lawmakers could just flat out repeal the original 2019 hemp legislation that opened up this industry. The state law was passed to comply with the federal deregulation of hemp, but Stephen, Congress may now walk that back and create a special task force to set new FDA restrictions on hemp products with THC. I think that could maybe factor into what's happening underneath the Capitol Dome coming up in July.
It could factor in, but it's all about timing, right? We have to see when Congress does what they do, when Texas does what it does. If Texas repeals what they passed about 5 years ago, then that's going to impact people who were actually doing other things by way of this. As far as I know, some people are creating fabrics and things like that from this becoming law. And so it's a trickle effect either way. Someone's going to have to take their ball and go home. I just don't see, we should have read the tea leaves when the lieutenant governor started doing his final push, saying he was confident the governor was going to sign it. Then the governor didn't sign it. And so I think we'll have to wait and see what those backroom deals are in July.
Well, like a bag of Doritos, this special session isn't just going to be all about consuming the hemp issue. There's several other ones. The hemp regulation, not the only special session call. Other legislative items seem like legislative busy work, not very controversial. There are two possible wild cards that the governor could play in this game: congressional redistricting, as well as no bail for violent criminals and illegal immigrants. Greg, I don't see those issues added to the special without a hemp deal in place. What do you think?
I'm not sure, but look, the call for redrawing congressional maps reportedly came from the Trump White House. That's an ask that's hard to ignore, even if you're Greg Abbott. Now, that said, I'm told chances of getting reconfigured maps through the Texas House are slim to none. Rudy, maybe you have a better sense of the appetite for redistricting. As for SB 1 bond denial for undocumented immigrants charged with serious crimes, that actually got close to passage in the regular and has lots of support. However, seems to me it may be unnecessary given Texas sheriffs are required to work with ICE now, and most, if not all, of these undocumented defendants will be held without bail on immigration detainers. Rudy?
Greg, I think you're right. Stephen, you agree with what Greg had to say about that?
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's we're throwing so much in. We'll have to see which thing shakes.
All right, we'll end it with that. When we come back, we'll have a discussion with Kelly Hancock. In a couple of days, Hancock becomes interim state comptroller, and there are some big issues waiting for him that could determine whether or not he will get to keep that job. This week, former state senator Kelly Hancock becomes interim state comptroller. He replaces Glenn Hager, who is becoming the top Aggie at the Texas A&M University system. I spoke to Hancock about how his appointment is not exactly a caretaker role because of the big issues that won't wait for next year's election.
Customer service is huge, and I have always talked about that as a legislator, that as a state, those are our customers. Our taxpayers are our customers, and so that's obviously very important. But we have a great opportunity this time. This past legislative session, we passed DOGE. It's going to be located in the governor's office, and what the comptroller's office does is we audit every agency. We track every invoice. We track every payment. So we're the ones that are going to provide that information, working hand in hand with my good friend the governor, to make sure that new DOGE unit under his purview scrapes out, and we're going to help him eliminate all waste within government.
Do you really see a lot of streamlining needed, a lot of waste? I mean, the Republicans have been in control of the government for a long time.
Yeah, you could say Texans were DOGE before DOGE was cool, but I think in government, as in anything, there's always room for improvement, and I think we're going to find some ways to reduce the size and scope of government and save people money.
A lot of times when you're dealing with an individual taking an interim approach, you really don't want to do a lot of change, but you're kind of forced to make some changes because a really big program is about to start, and that's school choice, the education savings account. You can't wait for the primary season. You can't wait for the general election. You've got to start building the ground up on this program. What's going to be the biggest challenge, you think, getting this thing started?
Well, I think we got to make sure we get it right. And within really almost a year's time. And so looking forward to the challenge.
In regards to the hemp regulation, somehow, some way, the comptroller's office is going to be part of this discussion. Are you ready for that discussion, or do you think that it should be we should wait and let the primaries, let the general election happen, and then take it up?
Well, it is a different role for me. And so when we did kind of get rid of the Wild West of hemp, we did expand compassionate use for those to kind of try to offset that. There has to be some guardrails, but as the comptroller's office, my role is very different. They establish the rules. Comptroller's office, our primary job is the revenue estimates and tracking revenues coming in and going out. And so we're going to leave that up to the legislature, and then we'll follow whatever guidelines they provide for us.
Early on in your career, oil and gas, the king, that was what drove our economy. We wanted to make sure that price of a barrel of oil was high. If it dropped, we were in trouble. The state's more diversified now. As you look at the books, are you satisfied in how we are in our diversification, that we're not so hooked on the price of a barrel of oil, or do we need to do a better job?
Well, our economy has changed. I mean, it used to be actually technology was one of our largest economic drivers, and now it's finance. And so oil and gas, still very important, is important to our economy. We continue to look at it. But as a small business owner that's in that market and has to deal with the fluctuations within oil and gas, I think I'm prepared as the comptroller, probably better than most, because I've operated in that field. I've had to run a budget within that field of my own business. It's not new to me, let me just say that.
All right, Kelly Hancock's appointment as chief clerk in the comptroller's office allows him to replace Glenn Hager. That move certainly provides Hancock with a political leg up on the other Republicans who have launched campaigns for that job. Republicans Christy Craddock and Don Hoffine so far among those with hats in the ring. And Dallas Democrat State Senator Nathan Johnson, he's mentioned as a possible candidate for his party. Now, there are accusations that the selection was unfair, but Stephen, Hancock has an early big test with school choice, and that $1 billion program has a built-in flaw. It's not truly universal. If people get mad, certainly that could hurt his bid, right?
And the thing is, it hinges on the if, and if those voters turn out. And the majority of the people who are frustrated with school choice, education savings accounts, however you want to describe it, school vouchers, those people have to turn out. And historically in Texas, and historically just in elections, Democrats have not been turning out at the levels that they need to make some real changes in their mind here in the state of Texas. So could it hurt him? Sure, but I think that's down the line. Now, if he's in this office and then the program begins to balloon, then he can get some heat, but I don't think he'll get heat on the outset.
I don't know. There's alligators in the water. Greg, do you agree this is a potentially politically dangerous audition for Hancock, or is having the incumbent titled enough to withstand any kind of shaky school choice launch and controversial cuts by that new version of the Texas DOGE boy? See what I did there? Greg.
All right, Rudy, I think in a political sense, the opportunity outweighs the risk for Hancock. But Rudy, you're spot on to point out the potential pitfall of launching a high-profile program like school choice, which, because of its initial funding limitation, is likely to have fewer winners than losers, at least in the program's launch year. Those disappointed at being left out will no doubt be looking for someone to blame, and Hancock needs to find a way to make sure it's not him. Now, on the flip side, if the rollout is mostly fair and fraud-free, then Hancock can take a proof of performance victory lap. Now, that said, Republican primaries are dominated by the hard-right grassroots of the GOP, and as we all know, they have their own priorities and criteria. Rudy?
Yeah, maybe a classic example of careful what you wish for, you just may get it. Now, Hancock's appointment is one of several moves in the 2026 game of election musical chairs, a handful of offices held by Republicans opening up, which could tee up Democrats for a few election night surprises. But Stephen, the party continues to double down on issues that alienate moderate and independent voters. Which races are your sources flagging as possible primary or general election upsets?
Man, I mean, I think Democrats would be happy with just winning one of any race, to be completely honest. And, you know, a couple of weeks ago, we talked to Kendall Scudder, and I've talked to some Democrats off camera, off the record, just about their sights as they look forward to trying to win some type of statewide office. Is it going to be the U.S. Senate, where Paxton versus Cornyn, the winner of that may negatively or positively impact who the Democrat nominee is? You have Colin Allred and Beto O'Rourke thinking about running. And then you have some other races that you trickle down to. You mentioned the Comptroller position and some others. And so honestly, I don't think Democrats have their eyes set on just one position. I think they are set on just trying to flip one of those positions.
Greg, how about you? Which races could be a good long shot bet for a surprise?
Rudy, I'm watching the increasingly crowded GOP primary for Attorney General, which now includes State Senators Joan Huffman and Mays Middleton, along with former Assistant U.S. Attorney Aaron Reitz. Huffman, fresh off of pushing through bond reform as a former judge and prosecutor. Middleton, who sponsored and passed high-profile conservative initiatives like the law banning biological males from women's sports, has a huge fortune to draw on. And Reitz is an articulate, hard-charging Trump ally who worked in high-profile roles for both Senator Ted Cruz and Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Three very serious candidates vying for the support of grassroots Republicans who may pay more attention to high-profile endorsements than is usually the case. It will be fascinating to see what unfolds. Rudy?
Yeah, you know, a sleeper one out of all this may be the Railroad Commission. We're going to have to watch that one. That one may be the surprise, I think, out of all this, because we're all focused on the AG. We're all focused on the Senate race. And, you know, Mitch Little may throw his hat into the AG's race, too. So my dark horse or surprise may be Railroad Commission. All right, Greg, wrap us up.
We will end it with that. We still have some issues to work on, and we will be back to do that after this break. Welcome back. We like to carve out a little time each week to present issues of personal interest or concern, and mine happily The performance of my favorite team, the Houston Astros, we're at the halfway point. And guess, despite monster injuries, despite the fact that we lost two of our biggest stars, despite the fact that we have like half of our AAA team playing on the big team, we are 15 games above 500. And looking good as first place in the West in comparison to franchises like the Atlanta Braves, who are wallowing 5 games below 500, wow, and whose better days seem to be behind them. All right, Rudy, I'm happy.
All right, Stephen, I'm going to take us out of the ballpark. You can bring us back in a little bit later. My issue is that there's got to be something in the air. All the over-the-top reactions in politics right now, from the federal to the state side, that, it's like this thing is the worst thing that's ever going to happen. Democracy is going to come crashing down because this ruling or this action. Has got to be something in the air, and I think it's the Saharan dust that's been blowing in. The Sahara dust is in my hair, and I want to get it out of my hair because it's sneezing. It's causing me a lot of irritation in my nose and in my ears politically, with all of these crazy, over-the-top, extreme reactions to whatever political issue is of the week. That's my issue. Stephen, are you taking us back to the ballpark?
Well, temporarily, because I'm not just going to let Greg slander the Atlanta Braves, the team of the South. And you may recall, less than 2 years ago, the Rangers weren't that hot right now, and they ended up winning the World Series. That's all I'm saying. My actual issue that we are talking about today is the NBA has to get better with these doggone hats, man. If a team did a trade, right, when the kid gets called, don't let them wear the hat of the team that they're not playing for. We've done this how many years now, and now it looks dumb because they're on pictures with the hat of the team that they don't even play for. I don't like that. The NBA can fix it. It's super simple. Dallas Mavericks got the #1 pick. The flag is planted in Dallas. All right, that's all the time we have. To see this episode or any of our past ones, go to our station's YouTube channels.
You can also keep the conversation going on our social media sites.
All right, the hot political topics in the Lone Star State just keep on coming. And we'll be back next week to tackle another 1 or 2 or 3. In the meantime, don't forget to let us know what you think the issue is.